Swamp Thing number 13, written by Scott Snyder, art by Yannick Paquette. This is part 1 of RotWorld, The Green Kingdom, concurrent storyline of RotWorld going on with Animal Man, The Red Kingdom. And as we picked up at the end of the prologue, they've been trapped in RotWorld for what felt like an hour. Turns out it was a year in the real world, and now they're in RotWorld. I mean, they were stuck in the Rot, the Gray. Anton Arcade. Anyway, so Swamp Thing plummets back down to Earth. It's a year later. And he's met by Poison Ivy and Dead Man, who immediately step up. Like, Poison Ivy's got a sword to his throat saying, like, all right, who are you? He's like, I'm Alec Holland. I'm Swamp Thing. You're Poison Ivy. You're Dead Man. And then it's like, yeah, okay. This is clearly a trick because Alec Holland disappeared a year ago. So we're just going to kill you because you're probably some sort of, like, rogue agent or something like that. And he's like, what? No, I'm me. And Dead Man's like, well, hold on. All right, I can check. And so he jumps into Swamp Thing's body, confirms that it is Alec Holland. And Poison Ivy's still very skeptical. She's like, nah, remember when Jason Woodrue, he got possessed by the Rot and he fooled us. And it's like, yeah, well, that's a dude inside of a plant thing. So that's Alec Holland. So Swamp Thing's tired of hearing their squabbling back and forth. He puts a Poison Ivy into some vines and is just like, okay, here's the thing. I don't care what you think, but I got to find the Parliament of Trees. And she's like, oh, well, that's all. They're right here. And we turn around and we see this giant, like, trunk of a tree, a stalk pretty much, going all the way up into the clouds. And it's like, they're right up there. And meanwhile, they're in the middle of a desert. So Swamp Thing's like, no, I left the Parliament growing in a Louisiana swamp. And Poison Ivy's like, yeah, this desert is Louisiana now. That's all that's left of the green, buddy. So then we cut to Abby Arcane, and she is on a plane flying to the Carpathian Mountains, which, forgive my geography, I don't know where that is, but she apparently spent a lot of time there growing up because there's not a lot of life there. It's pretty stark and barren, but she goes on about this whole thing of how death is what makes life worth it, so it's the balance. It makes it equal. You got to have death to appreciate life. But as she's on this plane trying to get to, I guess, some sort of central point to the Rot, the Rot is actually on the plane itself in the form of this black goop, and there is a grandfather and granddaughter on this plane, and the grandfather is immediately infected by the Rot, which then transforms him into this giant, mindless-looking beast that infects his granddaughter, and before you know it, the entire plane's infected. So Swamp Thing, Dead Man, and Poison Ivy are making their way up the stalk, and basically they're trying to think, like, they're blaming Swamp Thing for everything that happened because he disappeared for a year. And then Swamp Thing goes into the whole thing of like, no, we were trapped there. We were ready to fight the Rot. We weren't running away from it. Like, we were going in to fight it, and then we just missed out on a whole year somehow. But regardless, if I can just go and talk to the Parliament, we can get all the green together. And she's like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is it. This is all the green. There is nothing more than this. And he's like, oh, okay, well, that sucks. But anyway, he gets up there, and he sees the Parliament up on a cliff top, and so he sprouts his wings and gets up there and just basically communes with them. He goes into the green, and they basically are saying like, hey, Alec, what's up, man? You came back. That's cool. And it's like, hey, Parliament, so this is a messed up future. And he's like, future? No, this is now, Alec. This isn't like some weird thing where you've been shunted through. Like, we went through time. This is now for us. And he's like, okay, well, maybe we can find some way to go back and, like, fix things. And he's like, no. Like, this happened. This is set in stone. Like, this happened and we can't change it. This sucks, Alec. I don't think you quite understand. And he's like, okay, sorry. What happened to Abby? Maybe she could help. What happened to Abby? And they all go real quiet for a second. And Poison Ivy shakes Swamp Thing out of it. And he's like, hey, we're under attack. Like, usually they just have a bunch of tiny little, like, drones biting at the base of the stalk. Like, it's nothing to worry about. But this time they sent some high-powered superhero people. Probably because you're here. Once again, ruining things. So come on, you're going to come help us. And we see that Poison Ivy is able to make some, like, almost Swamp Things. Like, they're not actual Swamp Things, but they look a lot like them, and use them as like foot soldiers to take on these attacking hordes. And we see that the superheroes that are actually attacking are the Teen Titans, all ratified. So it's a big drag out battle, and the Parliament of Trees is narrating the fight, saying like, "Oh, do you think we should have told him what happened to Abby?" And it's like, well, yes, and we will when he gets back from this fight. Or maybe not. Like, it's a big thing to tell him. And we get the reveal of what happened on the plane, that all of the rot-infected passengers come after her. And she's like, guys, everyone stay in your seats. So we got to wait until the captain turns off the light. And then we see the captains are infected as well. And she's like, wait a minute, then who's flying the plane? And we see the plane is quite literally plummeting into the mountains as it's happening. And it, according to the Parliament in RotWorld 1 year later, she died. Like, that's it. She hit the mountains, exploded, and she died. The end. And that's also the end of the issue. I like it. I really do think it's a solid startup. It sets some, some bitterness between Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing, despite the fact they're on the same side, because, she was a villain. She didn't want to do any of this stuff, but at the same time, like, all of her green is gone. She has every right to be upset. So, yeah, overall, I really do. I enjoy how RotWorld is starting. Right now, it is just setting up the pieces. It's saying, okay, here's who's infected, here's who's not. And Animal Man's doing the same thing. It's just the setup time right now, but I really do like the starkness of the world and how it isn't a thing where people, like, there's no one who thinks that they can time travel back. They just think, like, no, this is it. Like, this is the world now. You're not here to save the world. Like, we lost. This is it now. So I like that way that they're dealing with that. Overall, though, this issue is probably an 8. It's very good. It's just still setting up the pieces, so there's still a little bit missing there. But overall, very good issue. Looking forward to the rest of RotWorld.